Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the podcast. We've been gone for a little while. We had a little break, but we're back now. Me and Oscar here to talk about some fights, some boxing fights this weekend. There's a little bit to talk about, so that's very interesting. A little controversial fight between Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul, which we'll get our hands tucked into, talk about that. And we have a UFC returning, thankfully, this weekend. Augusto Sakai versus Jair Rozenstruik, we'll go with. So it's been a great day for me because we got UFC coming up and I'm excited and I'm looking forward to it. How about you?
Yeah, I'm blessed to have fights this weekend. Every weekend without a fight is a weekend where I just feel lost. So now I feel a sense of direction, and I'm very excited to talk about all the fights this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, honestly, I can't wait. What was it? 2 weeks without any fights. It was just a pain in the backside. But we did have the Ultimate Fighter. That was great. What was your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I felt like they really focused on the meat and potatoes of it. They really didn't go in the direction of any drama, but it's very obvious that that's where they're going to be going in the next couple episodes. But I thought they had some skilled fighters on there, and I can't really remember his name, but the guy that is a Renzo Gracie trained jiu-jitsu player, I think he's going to give a lot of problems to these guys.
Was it the one who competed on the first episode?
Yeah, the guy who got, I believe, was the mounted.
Is it Andrei Petrovsky, something like that?
Oh yeah, he looked like a.
Yeah, he looked great. A good submission win on the first episode. I feel like every week we should do a little bit of a recap of the Ultimate Fighter, talk about how we're looking, how strong the contestants are looking. From the first sight, who are your favorites for the bantamweights and the middleweights?
Man, I'm really bad with names early on in the Ultimate Fighter, but the blonde guy who had a brain surgery, Vince Murdoch, yes, Vincent Murdoch. Yeah, I was fairly impressed by him on the Contender Series, so I think he'll do quite well. And as we just mentioned, Petrovsky, I believe he was in the NCAA, and he's trained by Renzo Gracie, so I think at the lower level, jiu-jitsu works very well. Chael Sonnen likes to point out that at the highest level, you're not going to win off of your back. But at this level, I think this guy can submit most of the guys there, especially with Brian Ortega and Renzo Gracie helping them out. But let's not forget, Alexander Volkanovski did bring in one of the best no-gi grapplers on this planet, Craig Jones. So I think they're going to be fairly evenly matched there. But Brian Ortega picked the first matchup perfectly well because he picked it against a guy who learned a lot of his stuff on YouTube and only had one amateur fight. So I was absolutely appalled that a guy with a lot of YouTube skills was on there. I don't know how that guy got in there.
But what he's got an opportunity of a lifetime, and he's got to take it with open arms. And hopefully it succeeds. Once you get on that Ultimate Fighter, though, once if you're not successful, you do make a name for yourself after. You get that little, that brand exposure, should I say? So it's good for the guys to see them on there. And as we mentioned, Andrei Petrovsky, he looked great, and I'm excited to see where he goes. Now he advanced to the semifinals next week. I can't remember off the top of my head who we have, but. I can't remember. Did they announce that fight?
I'm bad with names early on in the Ultimate Fighter. I just watched season 10, and I was learning some guys' names like 5 episodes in.
Yeah, well, it was a great episode to kick off the season, should we say? But let's talk about kicking it off, and we're going to straight away talk about Floyd Money Mayweather versus Logan Paul. It's happening this weekend. Are you watching UFC, or are you watching Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul, or are you watching both?
I'll be watching both. I'm not sure. Is this on Sunday or is it on Saturday? Because
it's on the same day.
Oh, it is. All right. Well, I'll definitely be watching this fight whenever it's on. I'll be completely ignoring the rest of the card. I honestly couldn't care less. But that main event is very intriguing. I know that a lot of people are picking Logan Paul just because he's bigger, and it really is. Really leaves me dumbfounded. Logan Paul has not won a boxing fight, so I don't know why you would ever pick him to win against a guy who has never lost a boxing fight. This is quite simply like a freak show fight. Floyd Mayweather will make it close. Floyd Mayweather is a showman. That's what he did against Conor. he let Conor hit him a couple times just to keep people interested. But eventually, we're going to see Floyd Mayweather attack the body after Logan Paul is going to be missing wildly and getting a little tired. And Floyd Mayweather should drop him with a couple body shots. It all depends on how mad Floyd Mayweather is about the Jake Paul incident. If he's really mad, I think he can definitely stop Logan Paul with a couple serious shots to the liver, because that's just how high level he is. I really think a lot of people are overplaying the size factor here. It's not going to matter when he can't hit him anyway. So we're going to see Logan Paul just swing wildly and just not land much. And Floyd will remind the casual boxing fans why this was a ridiculous fight to book in the first place.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous fight to book in the minds of the casual boxing fans, but it's a moneymaker for both fighters. They're going to make a hell of a ton of money, and that's what they're really in it for. If you look at the card, there are a few YouTubers on this card. We've got Vidal Riley kicking off the card on the YouTube, the prelims. He is a friend of KSIology DBT, KSI's mate, trainer, who trained KSI to actually beat Logan Paul. So he's on the card early on, first fight of the evening. So that'll be interesting. I'll definitely tune in to see that one. But other than that, I'm not really interested in most of the fights. The only other two maybe is Chad Johnson versus Brian Maxwell, and then Badu Jack. I'd like to see how Badu Jack looks after the time off and the defeats. But the main event of the evening, that's what they're put on there at the top of the bill for. Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul. Logan Paul is the maximum he can weigh is 190 pounds, and Floyd, the maximum he can weigh is 160 pounds. That you talked about the size factor. You said that people are playing into it too much, and I 100% agree. I think Floyd Mayweather is going to show, as you mentioned, he's going to be a little bit of a showman. Maybe a few punches land early on from Logan Paul, but it won't really graze the chin of Floyd. But it'll make it look like he ate them shots. But then when it starts to go into the second, the third, and the fourth, he's going to start to dig that body, and then just. Yeah, I think he's going to, exhaust Logan Paul. This is 8 rounds of boxing against the greatest boxer of all time. 50-0. As you mentioned, Logan Paul has never won a boxing fight. But there is a lot at stake for Floyd Mayweather. If you look at what possibly could happen if he loses this fight, to Logan Paul, a YouTuber, it would go down in history as one of the biggest upsets in boxing history. 100%.
Yeah, it would easily be the biggest upset in boxing history. I believe right now Floyd Mayweather sits at a minus 800 favorite. So to think that a guy like Logan Paul, who has never won a boxing fight, who had very competitive rounds with KSI, would win over Floyd, that's just ridiculous. And it would be quite possibly one of the craziest moments in sports history.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. But yeah, we've got that this weekend. I'm looking forward to that also. But also, we've got this weekend, as we mentioned early on when we kicked it off, we have the big boys, the heavyweights, Sakai versus Rozenstruik in the main event of the evening. The card, if you look down at the card, there's some decent fights on there. Santiago Ponzinibbio returns after his comeback loss, and he looks to, right the wrongs and get back into the win column. We got a decent co-main event, but other than that, we got some decent fights. He's fighting Santiago Ponzinibbio is fighting Miguel Baeza, which is incredible step up in competition for Baeza, and this is a make or break fight for Santiago Ponzinibbio. If he drops 2 back to back after his comeback, it's very hard to see where he goes from next. But he's a great fighter. The both men are great fighters. It's a great fight. I think we're going to see a knockout in that fight for sure.
Yeah, I do think that would be the ideal result in that fight. I actually am predicting a ton of finishes for this card, so get ready for me to fire off first round knockout, second round knockout. This is just the way I see this card playing out. We've seen some, quite heavy heavy cards, and this is not going to be one of them. So I really suggest that people tune in, despite I would say the lack of huge stars on this card. But this is going to be pretty fun to watch if it all goes well.
Not to mention as well, early on in the card, we got Makwan Iramirikani returning after his loss against Edson Barboza. But it's as I mentioned, it's a great card up top to bottom. If you look at the prelims, you got Tana Bosa versus Ilir Latifi. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What a fight.
Yeah. I can't wait to get into that one because I think Latifi is kind of under-respected in the MMA community just because of how close that fight with Derek Lewis was, and Derek Lewis is about to fight for the belt. But we'll kick it off with the main event: Jairzinho Rozenstruik against Augusto Sakai. This is a fight where the winner probably gets a top 5 opponent next. So this is a high stakes fight, and I would say it's a higher stakes fight for Jairzinho Rozenstruik because ever since that Francis Ngannou loss, I don't think he's been the same fighter. I think he's been a little gun shy, and he's just not been the same. And he really needs to let his hands go. If he doesn't let his hands go, this will not be a great night for him. But he stays dangerous during the entire fight, and I don't think Augusto Sakai does. How do you see this playing out?
I see a knockout happening in this fight because it's two heavyweights. And when they're two big heavyweights that can punch like these two, that can crack, we're going to see a knockout. And I think it's going to go via Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I think he's going to get a knockout in this one. As you mentioned, we saw in the Alistair Overeem fight with Jairzinho, all he needed is that one punch. It was 4 minutes and 59 seconds in the 5th round. He landed that one punch and it was over, and that's all he needs. He's got that freakish power, and if he lands on Sakai's chin, it could be lights out. And that's what I'm predicting. I think Jairzinho Rozenstruik will go back into the win column. But as you mentioned, he definitely needs to throw more. If he comes in there with the same mentality as he did in his last 2 fights, he's going to lose.
Yeah, I believe he's acknowledged that this has got to be a fight where he shows that he's made adjustments because he's just not the Jairzinho Rozenstruik evolved in the last couple. In the June Dos Santos fight, he did win that fight by 2nd round knockout, and that was my official prediction. But I was very nervous the entire fight because he was very tentative. I thought he was let his hands go, but June Dos Santos landed a couple good shots on him, and it was a coin flip fight. If you were watching it live before he got the knockout. In fact, I scored the first round for June Dos Santos watching it. So this is a fight where if Jairzinho Rozenstruik shows up like the guy that debuted in 2019, knocking guys out in 20 seconds, this should be a really good performance for him because Augusto Sakai has never gotten finished by strikes on the feet. He got grounded pounded by Overeem. I believe he had a rib injury in that fight. So that's why he got taken down so easily and straight up mauled. And it also showed that he has major cardio issues. Even before the Overeem fight, that was 5 rounds. He fights Blagoy Ivanov. In that fight, I had Augusto Sakai losing before he avoided that takedown. And that fence grab that he used, that was completely illegal. It was the kind of fence grab that deserves a point deduction. So that was just not a good look that night. And I think Jairzinho Rozenstruik is a level above in the striking. So Jairzinho Rozenstruik will get the 2nd round knockout here because I still think he's still gonna have to fill him out because I think Jairzinho Rozenstruik still doesn't have all of his confidence yet. He's gonna fill him out in the 1st round, and I don't think Augusto Sakai is going to look for a takedown like that. I thought Cyril Gahn would submit Rozenstruik, but Rozenstruik is at the American Top Team gym, and I think those guys put together a good game plan. So Jairzinho by 2nd round knockout is the ideal pick here. The guy has nukes in his hands, and if he swings them, it's going to be over.
100%, I agree with you. He's got that freakish, that power in any hand, and he can put your lights out. Especially that walking back check left hook, which is definitely a possibility that can land in this fight. But as you mentioned, this is a fight that Rozenstruik needs to win, and he needs to win it impressively. He needs to let his hands go and get that stoppage. Maybe early on. I think I see it happening early on. I think, as you mentioned, maybe round one, number 2. If it goes beyond that, I'd probably favour Sakai. But round number 1, number 2, I'm leaning towards Rozenstruik, and I'm seeing him getting it done via TKO or maybe KO. But Sakai in his last fight lost against Overeem, as you mentioned, got wrestled to death and just got grounded and pounded. And now Overeem's not in the UFC anymore. So, but we know how good Overeem is still. He should be in the UFC right now, but he was getting ill. He's getting old, and UFC made not a wise decision, maybe a bad decision to let Overeem go. He made his last run. Unfortunately, fell short to Volkov. But he's still a top level guy in Overeem. There's no shame in that loss. But this is a good fight for both men. It's a good, favorable matchup for both men because they both like to strike. So it's a good matchup for both men.
Yeah, Augustus Sakai, he's half Brazilian and half Japanese. Yeah, half Brazilian, half Japanese. So on both sides, they both have their own styles. The Brazilians, they like to grapple. Japanese, they like to strike. So he's a well-rounded fighter. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but I don't think he really comes out with that kind of game plan. And let's move on to the co-main event. Another heavyweight fight between Walt Harris and Marcin Tybura. Where do you see this one going?
Ever since Walt Harris lost his daughter, he hasn't won a fight, and it's really sad to watch it happen when you're watching it live. I want him to win so bad for his daughter. I just want him to get that win, so he can say he done his daughter proud. But he's fought some good competition in his last few fights. He fought Alistair Overeem. He got finished by Alistair Overeem. Got finished by Volkov. Some fights that that he lost against good names. If you look at Volkov, he's top 3, top 4 in the world right now. As to Overeem, we know how good he is, but he's not inside the UFC at the moment. And if you look at Marcin Tybura, he's on a 4-fight winning streak. Greg Hardy, Ben Rothwell, Max Ingression, and Sergey Spivak. And Sergey Spivak is a really good fighter, and that's a really good win to get under his belt. And in his last performance against Greg Hardy, he had that cardio that Greg Hardy just didn't have, and he got him to that second round, and he ultimately got the fight where he wanted it and got that ground and pound win. But if you look in the past, he has been finished and he's been knocked out 3 times inside the UFC. If you look at that, what word am I looking for? In the words of Oscar, if you look at someone when they get knocked out, you have to question whether how his chin is. But in his last 4 fights, he's held up. But you have to question: is his chin going to be able to hold up against Walt Harris?
I personally don't think it will. Walt Harris has moved to Extreme Couture for this fight, and he's actually living in Francis Ngannou's house. He's guarding it while Francis is in Cameroon. He's training with Eric Nixick. Eric Nixick has proven to be an excellent coach. He even guided Aljamain Sterling to winning the title. So I don't know what else you got to say about it. But Marcin Tybura is on a roll. Everybody was talking about Kevin Holland last year. They were saying he's got one of the best win streaks in the UFC, but everybody was completely ignoring what Marcin Tybura was doing. He got 4 wins last year, and that was after a really tough 2019 where he got absolutely destroyed by Augustus Sakai. And before that, Shamil Abdurrahimov just beat him up, And those fights really showed me that Marcin Tybura cannot take the shots from the big boys. But in the Ben Rothwell fight, he got completely out-volumed, outstruck. He was looking really bad in that first round. And Ben Rothwell was overzealous in that fight. He gassed out, and Marcin Tybura took advantage of it. So if this is like the Ben Rothwell fight, Marcin Tybura will win. But here's the thing. Walt Harris, he's acknowledged that ever since he lost his daughter, he came back too quick. He was out of shape. He was not mentally there. He was just not mentally ready to fight. And I think if he really looked himself in the mirror and realizes what he needs to do, he can pull this off. But if this goes out of the first round, this is 100% Marcin Tybura's fight. So Walt Harris by first round knockout is my pick, but if this leaves the first round, Marcin Tybura can probably finish him as well with some ground and pound. Because Walt Harris has not been looking good in that second round because he's a first round knockout guy or bust. So, what do you think happens here? Because Walt Harris will stay dangerous in that first round. Even the Overeem fight, he nearly finished it.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, I was literally about to bring that up. In that Overeem fight, Harris almost got that win, almost finished him, but that ultimately cost him the fight. He gassed himself out, and Overeem came back and got the win. But in this fight, as you mentioned, that move to Extreme Couture is going to be huge for him. I think Eric Nitschik will sit him down and be like, this is what you're doing wrong, and this is how we're going to fix it. If you get somebody hurt, don't rush your work. Stay composed. If you see the opening, then finish the fight. I think he's going to be a different fighter in this fight. As you mentioned as well, he said he came back too quickly. I think that was 100% correct after the loss of his daughter. And I think he's going to be a totally different Walt Harris in this fight. And I think we're going to see a knockout for Walt Harris against Marcin Tybura in round number 1 and number 2.
Yeah, Marcin Tybura, even in the Greg Hardy fight, and we know how low level of a fighter Greg Hardy is. The guy barely has any experience. Even Greg Hardy, who's basically the only thing you can really say about the guy, he hits hard. And he did hit Marcin Tybura with some heavy shots in that first round. And I picked Marcin Tybura in that fight, and I was really sweating when he was getting hit with those big shots. So Walt Harris, I think he's just got more precise shots than Greg Hardy, and he'll finish it.
Well, let's move on to a fight at middleweight. Roman Delancey versus Leorano Steripoli. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, Leorano Steripoli is a former welterweight. He's moving up to middleweight for this fight. And honestly, I don't know if it's the right move. Even at welterweight, he was not doing particularly great. He lost to Tim Means, Muslim Salakov. Tim Means will beat the lower level guys, but when you get to the upper echelon of competition at 170 pounds, Tim Means does not win. And Steripoli is he prefers to strike, but here's the thing: against a guy like Roman Delancey, who was a light heavyweight last year, he was a very successful light heavyweight. He's got a wrestle heavy style, but he also hits like a truck. And Leorano Steripoli has gotten finished in the first round before. So when a former light heavyweight hits a former welterweight, I believe he's not going to like it at all, and I think he will fold. But if that doesn't happen, we're going to see Roman Delancey completely dominate him on the ground. But the problem with Roman Delancey is he's a very submission over position kind of guy. You saw in the Trevor Giles fight, he was jumping at a heel any chance he could, even if it resulted in him getting hammered. And that possibly cost him that fight. That was a split decision fight, a very close fight. But Roman Delancey should get this done. I just think he's going to be bigger, and he's got a huge edge in the grappling. So where do you see this going?
I pretty much agree with everything you said there. As you mentioned, a former light heavyweight versus a former welterweight. This is going to be a massive side factor. If you look at the pecs of Roman Delancey, this guy is big. He's a really big guy, and he's going down at 185 pounds. What impressed me the most is that the shape he's in at 185 pounds. He looks much better at 185. He even stepped in at short notice for a 185 pound fight, made the weight. It just shows the shape, the dedication this man is in. And I think we're going to see a great performance from him, whether that's a knockout or maybe a wrestling heavy fight, a 15 minutes, just, grueling. But I think he gets this one done. And as you mentioned, Leorano Steripoli has been finished in the first round before. So that's definitely on the cards. Roman Delancey, as you mentioned, hits like a truck. And all it takes is one shot and your lights could be out. And I'm leaning towards a wrestling game plan for Roman Delancey. I think this is the way he gets it done.
Yeah, let's just hope Roman Delancey doesn't completely gas out like he has in his previous fights and go for something silly and get caught. But other than that, it should be a really good performance for Roman Delancey. Let's move on. A guy who did not have a good performance at all in his comeback was Santiago Ponzinibbio, and he's going to be fighting the undefeated prospect Miguel Baeza. Santiago Ponzinibbio was on a 7-fight win streak before he came back, and it all ended with a 4th round knockout of Neil Magny. almost nobody knocks out Neil Magny that late. The guy usually takes over later in the fight, but that wasn't the case for us. Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio was looking like a world beater, really, before he came back. And when he came back, it was very obvious that he was starting slow. He had a ton of ring rust, and Li Jingliang landed one bomb, and it was over. Santiago Ponzinibbio has not always had the greatest chin. Lawrence Larkin finished him. Mike Perry was able to rock him quite well. And after so many injuries and so many health issues, a really long layoff, I should have known better than to pick him against Li Jingliang, who really hits very hard. So, and before that, he was very low volume. He was just not throwing anything out there. And you cannot just stare at the wall and watch paint dry against Miguel Baeza, who he's undefeated and he's finished Matt Brown. He's gotten a calf kick finish in the UFC, which is really hard to do. So Miguel Baeza should have him beat here because he should have higher rate of confidence. He is undefeated, and he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. A lot of people were picking him to submit Takashi Sato, and I really didn't think he would do it because he's never submitted anybody before, despite him being a black belt. And what does he do? He has the smartest game plan, and he takes him down and submits Takashi Sato. So maybe he could take it to the ground against Ponzinibbio here, but at the end of the day, Baeza has legitimate knockout power, and you got to question Santiago Ponzinibbio's durability after the last fight. So I'll go with Baeza by second round TKO.
That's a great points you meant there. You mentioned there the ring rust of Santiago Ponzinibbio when he came back. It was definitely evident. He did get clipped by that big shot versus Ling. Ling Jiang? I want to say Jing Liang Li. There we go. He got clipped by that big shot and ultimately got finished. And Miguel Baeza 10-0. If you're undefeated as a fighter, you're doing something right, and he's doing something right, and he's 3-0 inside the UFC. He's getting a big step up against Santiago Ponzinibbio, and you got to see where he is at in his career. He's looking great. Finished Matt Brown, as you mentioned, submitted Takashi Sato, but Santiago Ponzinibbio, as you mentioned before, he had that that big layoff. He knocked out Neil Magny. Who as you mentioned, who does that? Especially in the fourth round. After the second, third, fourth, fifth, you see Neil Magny take over because his endurance, his cardio, he looks great. But Ponzinibbio shot the lights out in the fourth round. It was an incredible knockout, and then he took some time off, and he paid the price for that time off, and he suffered that big loss. But Baeza 10-0, a really explosive fighter, great fighter, hits hard. As you mentioned as well, has that BJJ black belt. So this could go the same way as Santiago Ponzinibbio's last fight against Ji Liang. Maybe Santiago Ponzinibbio steps in, a counter straight down the middle. Who knows? It could drop Santiago Ponzinibbio. But I feel like Ponzinibbio will learn from his mistakes, obviously, from his last fight. But ultimately, will that affect this fight? Who knows? I think this is going to be a really good fight. I think, in my opinion, it's a coin flip fight because I think this would go anyway.
Yeah, we did see Baeza get tagged by Matt Brown in the first round. That was a closer fight than a lot of people remember. Baeza is on the rise in this division. Ponzinibbio, in my opinion, should be a ranked fighter. He beat Neil Magny, who's in the top 10 right now, and he had the long layup, so he got kicked out of the rankings. And Li Jingliang knocked him out and got ranked right after. So that shows you what the media and what the community thinks of Ponzinibbio's position in the welterweight division. But Baeza is on the rise. He'll probably get the knockout here. Ponzinibbio, as I mentioned, he got rocked by Mike Perry. I just think Baeza will be too much for him on the feet.
That's interesting. My official pick, this is a hard one to choose from. But I'm going to go with Santiago Ponzinibbio. I'm going to see him return back to the win column. I think it's going to be a hard 15 minutes. I'm actually going to go a decision on this one.
Oh, wow. If this goes to decision, it's probably going to be fight of the night.
Yeah, 100%. Next coming up on the main card, we've got Dusko Toradovic versus Gregory Rodriguez. This is a great fight. How do you see it going?
I actually think this is a guaranteed knockout fight. Dusko Toradovic, he keeps his hands low. He relies on his head movement, but the problem is his head movement isn't that great anyway. And he paid for it in the Punahele Soriano fight. Soriano put a beating on him. That was a brutal beating that he put on him. And Toradovic was undefeated before that fight, but he really never faced anybody like Soriano that would really make him pay and would avoid the takedowns. So against Gregory Rodriguez just fought 3 weeks ago, and he won the LFA middleweight title. But before that, he knocked out Al Matavo, who was on the Contender Series, and I don't think Matavo's a high-level fighter. He's very undersized for the division. And before that, he went on the Contender Series as a big favorite against Jordan Williams. And what happens? He gets absolutely destroyed in the first round. He gets slept against the guy in Jordan Williams, who is a diabetic. He really doesn't like cutting weight a lot, and he did not have a good go in the middleweight division against Nasruddin Mamedov, and now he's going to welterweight now. And I just don't think Gregory Rodriguez has a great chin. He's not even 30, and he's already getting just taken completely out in the first round. So a guy like Dusko Toradovic, who throws with reckless abandon, I think he'll be able to clip him. But if he doesn't clip him, you best bet Rodriguez, who's at Sanford MMA training with some tremendous striking coaches, could knock him out. So this one will not see a judge's scorecard.
Oh, I 100% agree with you on that one. As you mentioned, for Dusko, it's either kill or be killed mentality. Either he knocks someone out or he gets knocked out. He keeps his hands low, swings, and if it lands, he gets that knockout. But if his opponent, reads him, slips it, and his opponent lands on him, he gets knocked out. So this is an interesting fight. I'm going to favor Dusko Toradovic in this fight, and I'm going to see a knockout. And I think it's either going to be, in round one. I think we're going to see a really good knockout in this fight, and we're going to see Gregory Rodriguez absolutely flatlined on the floor with a huge punch.
Yeah, that's going to be a really entertaining knockout, and that's just going to be one of many on this card.
Mm-hmm. No, as you mentioned there, entertaining knockout, and there's going to be one of many in this card. And Tom Breeze versus Antonio Arroyo. Is that going to be a knockout?
I don't think it will. Arroyo has actually never been knocked out. Tom Breeze, really, the only guy he's knocked out recently was KB Buller, and KB Buller is not a UFC level fighter. In his last fight against Andreas Michailidis, we saw that this guy's just he's not a high level fighter at all. And he just got power jabbed and just went down. And that was just, that was kind of, a tune-up fight for Tom Breeze. Tom Breeze is fighting a guy, Antonio Arroyo, who likes to strike. And if it goes to the ground, he'll submit you. But that's only for the first half of the fight. The second half of the fight looks terrible on the Arroyo side. I picked him with pretty great confidence to beat Darren Wynn because he had a huge size advantage, and Darren Wynn has shown, some grappling deficiencies in terms of jiu-jitsu in the past against Joe Mearshart, and I thought he would do what Joe Mearshart did, but that's not the case. He just doesn't have good cardio, and if he did have good cardio, I would pick him to beat Tom Breeze, but Tom Breeze has clearly better cardio, and I think he can hurt him on the feet on multiple occasions and get a judge's decision. But the thing with Tom Breeze, he's shown that that in the back he's not mentally comfortable at all. So if he does not walk in with the right mindset, he will lose this fight. But I'm expecting him to have the right mindset and get the win by decision. GT says, bruh, Logan Paul is nothing. Yeah, that's what I'm. The guy's never even won a boxing fight. I don't know why you're thinking him to beat the GOAT.
Exactly. The GOAT of boxing is just not happening in my mind, not happening in my university. My universe. Anyway, moving on to the next fight that we have coming up, I think actually I'll quickly put my prediction in. I think it's going to be a Tom Breeze. I think it's going to be a decision, but possibility I'm going to maybe a knockout with Tom Breeze. I would favor that, but my top pick would be a decision with Tom Breeze. I think he gets it done in that fight. The only threat would be a submission from Antonio Arroyo, but he has to get him to the ground. But we'll see what happens. I think Tom Breeze gets this one done, and let's talk about a good fight. Makwan Amirkhani, he knows no introduction. We all know who he is. Against a short notice step-in fighter, Kamila Kirk. Who have you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna shock a lot of people with this one, but I actually have Kamila Kirk. He was a minus 250 favorite when he fought Bobby Quarantillo on the Contender Series, and he showed. He really proved that he was the rightful favorite in the first round, where he was piecing up Quarantillo. Quarantillo is a slow starter, but nonetheless, Kirk is a better striker than Amirkhani. Amirkhani hates getting bullied. In the Shane Burgos fight, he got pieced up. He was just fell on his knees and just got pummeled. He's really not a good nail. I was really shocked. He surprised and he survived the knockdowns from Edson Barbosa. I really thought Barbosa would knock him out, but he proved to be somewhat durable in that fight. But at the end of the day, he's just one of these guys that's always going to be outside of the top 15 because he's pretty one-dimensional. If he can't submit you, he's going to really struggle on the feet, and that's going to be the case here. Kirk, I believe, is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's got a lot of submissions on his record. And he's going to be the better striker here, and if he can defend those takedowns for Makwan, I think he'll edge it out in decision here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so valid points that you brought up there. Makwan Amirkhani, as you mentioned, he's not very great now. We saw it against Shane Burgos and Edson Barbosa. We also saw it there. But as you mentioned, Kirk is a phenomenal striker with some heavy hands, and he's got that submission threat as well. And that's where Makwan Amirkhani shines. The submission offense from him is incredible. That's where he gets most of his wins. And the only way Kirk has lost the fight is decision, or he's been finished. And do I see Makwan Amirkhani finishing Kirk via strikes? No. But do I see Makwan Amirkhani finishing Kirk via submission? Yes.
Yeah, that's a legitimate possibility. But Kirk actually has never been submitted, so I really think Kirk can inflict enough damage on the feet to get the judge's decision here. Yeah, Kirk is really getting slept on by a lot of people heading into this fight. They just think Makwan is just going to get an easy win here, like David Dvorak did against his opponent last week. But that's just not going to be the case. And I think fighters that take fights, against guys that came in on short notice, sometimes they tend to overlook them, and that might be the case here. And I think Kirk gets the upset.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's going to be a great night, a great fight as well. Glad to see Makwan Amirkhani back. He's a great fighter. He has some great fights in the past, but he's got a tough test, as you mentioned, in front of him. But also a good fight. We have Monte De La Rosa versus Aroni Elipsky. I'm going to put it out there straight away. I think Monte De La Rosa wins this one, 100%.
Yeah, I got all the confidence in the world. Monte De La Rosa is a really good wrestler. In her last fight, she showed a ton of heart. She got cut really bad by who was it? Silva. Yeah, she got caught up in the clinch. She got elbowed, and she fought through it. She was never giving up on her takedown attempts, and she made it a close fight. And in the end, it was a draw. It was obvious that Silva would have gotten the win if it wasn't for the blatant cage grab in the first round. But Monte De Rosa, she really impressed me in that fight, even though it was a draw. And before that, she's shown that against the really low level of women's MMA, she's going to just dominate them and possibly submit them. But Ariane Lipsky, she does come from a striking and jiu-jitsu background. A lot of people think she can submit Monte De Rosa, but I completely disagree. The only person of note that she's really submitted was Luana Carolina. And I just don't think Luana Carolina is too high level fighter, and Dela Rosa, she's got the right game plan. Many times in the women's division, we see a wrestler go up against a jiu-jitsu player, and what happens? They give up those takedowns. They get stuck on their back, and they don't get that submission. And that's just going to be the case here. Drew Dober is teammates with Montana De La Rosa, and they asked him, "Do you think she'll get the finish?" And he admitted that she won't. That she tends to play it safe, and Montana De La Rosa by decision is one of the best bets you can make on this card, if you ask me.
100% agree. That's the way I see the fight going. Is the decision, wrestling heavy from Montana De La Rosa. This is the way she gets it done. Elipsky, yes, she has that submission threat, but is it enough to submit Montana De La Rosa? I don't think so. I don't think it happens. I think Montana De La Rosa gets this one done. Uses her wrestling, grinds out the victory, and gets a fairly unanimous decision win on the judges' scorecards. But let's look at a heavyweight fight that is very anticipated. It's on the prelims, which is crazy. Tanner Boser versus Ilir Latifi. Who are you backing?
Yeah, these are two guys that should probably be ranked in this heavyweight division. Tanner Boser was looking like the hottest thing despite losing to Saragon, but he fights Andrei Arlovsky. He has just way too much respect for Andrei Arlovsky. He's very tentative. I actually thought that Tanner Boser did enough damage with his leg kicks to win that fight. He did outstruck Andre, but the thing is, Andre actually was able to hurt him with a couple strikes, including a spinning back fist. Tanner Boser, he's really good on the feet, but have we seen him tested on the ground at all? No, not really, not in a while. And a guy in Ilir Latifi who is really undersized for this division. This guy was undersized at light heavyweight. And what does he do? He moves up, and he, in my opinion, he beats Derek Lewis. He got about 10 minutes of control time in that Derek Lewis fight. But in that third round, he did get tagged, and I believe those Texas judges that night were way off. That was the night of Ewell versus Martinez, Lee versus Murphy, and most importantly, Reyes and Jones. So those judges that night were off, in my opinion. And they were off in that fight. And who is Derek Lewis fighting next? He's fighting the champion. So you could argue that Ilir Latifi is a top 5 heavyweight. So don't disrespect him. But here's the thing. Latifi does not have good cardio. And if he can't take you down, it's not going to be a pleasant night for him, most likely. And Tanner Boser, he'll probably do enough damage to Ilir Latifi. Tanner Boser, though he did get 2 finishes in a month, those were kind of odd finishes against not that durable guys. And Latifi has proven to be durable. He survived flurries from Derek Lewis, so I'll go with Boser by decision here. But don't be surprised if Latifi pulls off a pretty big upset with a decision, because the guy, he's got really good wrestling these days.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that he trains with Alexander. I believe he trains with Gustafsson, right?
And Khamzat Chimaev.
Khamzat Chimaev, yeah, the absolute 2 killers who, by the way, are flying over to America because they'll be fighting soon, both of them. So that's interesting. I hope to see them back soon. Yeah. And I'm where would they be training? I can't remember. They mentioned it, but I can't think off the top of my head.
Something Star.
No, not TriStar. I don't think it's TriStar. No.
Yeah, I can't really get that down, but Latifi and Gustafsson were the 2 guys that really began the hype with Khamzat, because we know those guys are very skilled fighters, and they were saying that Khamzat is having competitive sparring sessions with them, and that's what really started the hype with Khamzat. So yeah, training with one of the best wrestlers in Sweden definitely won't hurt Latifi's wrestling.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned there, this is a great fight. A style of 2 different. This fight is a different. A different. What am I calling? A matchup of 2 different styles. That's what I was trying to find. The wrestler Ilir Latifi and the Tanner Boser, that striker, patient striker, looking for the strikes. But I think Latifi gets the takedowns in this fight. And I see a little bit of control time happening. I think he's wrestling, as you mentioned, against Derek Lewis, 10 minutes and still didn't get the win. But in this fight, I think the judges will be on par. And I think we're going to see Latifi get the Wiz one done. And I think it's going to be wrestling. The key factor.
this fight might be determined by the judges' opinion that night, because some judges these days, they'll go damage over everything. They don't care if you got dominated for 4 minutes. If you land a couple good shots in that minute, they'll give you the fight. So this is going to be very interesting scoring wise, and it could be a discussion piece later.
Well, let's talk about a fight that could definitely be where definitely could be a finish. Francisco Trinaldo versus Muslim Salakov. That definitely has a finish written all over it, surely.
Yeah, this is a fight between two guys that really like to strike, and this is a very important fight for Francisco Trinaldo. This is his move up to welterweight, and a lot of people think he'll be undersized here, but this guy's always been a huge lightweight. He's always got a ton of weight, and he's really not completely outmatched here in the size department, but in the striking department, he is. He really is. Muslim Salakov labels himself the king of kung fu. He throws crazy spinning attacks. He can also be very technical. In the Zaleski dos Santos fight, that was really the eye opener for me. He can strike with the best of them. But here's the problem with Salakov. Salakov has been submitted twice, and when he got submitted by, was it Alex White who submitted him? That was just not a good look. Back in 2017, he got submitted, and after that, I really can't trust him on the ground. And I believe Francisco Trinaldo has 5 submission wins on his record. He hasn't submitted anybody in a very long time, but if Francisco Trinaldo can wrap him up with an armbar or something like that, I believe that's a real possibility that a lot of people are ignoring, because Salakov has only lost by submission. But I think at the end of the day, we're going to have an older guy in Francisco Trinaldo who's going to be too slow, and Salakov will probably, if he doesn't get the finish, he's at least going to heavily rock Trinaldo here and get a unanimous decision.
Yeah, this is a great fight. Both men have power in their hands. There could go a knockout either way. We've seen that in Trinaldo in his last fight against Jay Herbert.
Stop the fight.
Stop the fight. Yeah, that ruthless, overhand left, and then the scream of Dan Hardy shouting "Stop the fight," which ultimately could have got him sacked from the UFC. We don't know. There's been a lot of hidden back stuff. What happened with him and this female employee, but we're not here to talk about that. But it was a fantastic straight overhand left from Trinaldo. Absolutely put the lights out with Jay Herbert. You seen he was out as soon as he hit the floor. The referee should have stopped it. The punches were unnecessary. But this fight, if any man lands clean, it could be a wrap. It could be a night. But as you mentioned, Salakov has been submitted in the past twice in both his losses. And I do favor Salakov on the stand-up. I think he's the best stand-up, but it's the grappling, which is a big problem. But does Trinaldo, have the skills to get this one done? I don't know. I'm not too sure. I think Salakov gets this one done, and we're maybe going to see a finish in the third round.
Yeah, that's a real possibility. And I believe Salakov's very underappreciated in this welterweight division. This guy's a really good striker, and he's got a lot of diverse attacks, and I think he can put a lot of entertaining fights on with just about anybody.
100%, I agree with you. If you look at his last fights, he beat Alessio Zaleski. That was 10 months ago. He beat Leonardo Steripoli, Nordin Taleb, and Ricky Rainey. But his losses, as you mentioned, against Alex Garcia, where he got submitted. Both his losses have came via rear naked choke. So if I'm Trinaldo, I'm probably practicing that throughout the whole camp, and I hope it comes during the fight. That's definitely the possibility. But moving on to an absolute cracker at lightweight. This is going to be a fantastic fight, possibly even fight tonight. We have Alan Patrick versus Mason Jones at 155 pounds. Mason Jones returning after his first loss against, off the top of my head, I can't remember, but is it Trevin Giles?
No, it wasn't Trevin Giles. Giles is a middleweight. It was
yeah,
I can't Mike Davis.
Mike Davis. They look alike. I was close.
By the way, that fight was, in my opinion, right now it's a contender for fight of the year.
100%. It was a great fight. Both men, put their heart on their sleeve and went out for it. But who do you have in this fight? Who wins this one?
I got a lot of confidence that Mason Jones will absolutely piece him up and get a finish here. Alan Patrick, he's been around a long time, and he's fairly one-dimensional. In the Bobby Green fight, he got completely exposed. Once he got those takedowns stuffed by Bobby Green completely pieced him up on the feet. Mason Jones, he had a really good showing against a guy, Mike Davis, who's only lost to Youssef and Burns. So I really think Mason Jones is a high-level fighter. He was a Cage Warriors double champ. And he throws with reckless abandon on multiple occasions. He doesn't mind throwing a flying knee or something like that. And I believe he can definitely catch Alan Patrick, who has been finished in the past and might be near the end of his career here. Mason Jones should win this fight. If he gets way too reckless, maybe he gets taken down, but that'll just be one round. This guy's actually got really good cardio, and he'll finish Alan Patrick and get himself a performance of the night bonus, I believe.
Yeah, 100%. This is a great fight, and there's definitely going to be a performance of the night bonus from either man. But I'm favouring Mason Jones in this one, as you mentioned, a double champion in Cage Warriors, 170 pounds, 155 pounds, one of the first since Conor McGregor. So he's got that history under his belt. But yes, I think Mason Jones returns back to the win column, and I think we're going to see a knockout in this one. I think he's going to get it done.
Yeah, it's a good fight for Mason Jones. That Alex Davis fight was not an easy welcome to the UFC.
100%, I agree with you. Mike Davis is an absolute killer, and he's shown that in the past. But who else is an absolute killer? Manon Fiorot. Manon Fiorot, she is an absolute savage.
Yeah, Manon Fiorot is one of the few women at flyweight that will get in your face, and she will stay in your face, and she will completely bully you until you just curl up in the fetal position, and she lands that ground and pound. That's what she did to Victoria Leonardo. I actually picked Victoria Leonardo to submit her because I thought that maybe Fiorot was a little one-dimensional, but in her debut fight, I believe it was Leah McCourt, it was a split decision, and that was a close fight too. We've seen Fiorot on a consistent basis finish girls, which is by strikes, which is pretty hard to do because, as we said before, women just don't have the same power in their hands as men. But she definitely has a ton of power, and she throws some really good head kicks. And she's fighting a girl who's coming in on short notice. I believe she's 5-0. This is not going to be a fun fight at all for her opponent. I believe her opponent, her name is Hichio.
Ooh, how would you pronounce that? Maybe it's Ricky or?
Yeah, she's Brazilian, so it's Tabitha Hichi.
Oh, Rishi. Okay. Yeah, but if she has some finishes on her record too, one win by armbar, two was that two by punches?
I looked. If you look at her Tapology record, has she beaten a single opponent with a winning record? No, she hasn't. She's not beaten a single opponent with a winning record. She doesn't even have 10 fights, and she's in the UFC. This is, in my opinion, this is not a deserving position. She had some good shows on Alpha, but as I said, not people with winning competition. This is not going to be a fun night for her. And you want to talk about people getting their performance of the night bonuses? Fiorot will absolutely demolish her and get that second round TKO. Fiorot's a monster. She was fighting Marina Morozos, and that was going to be a much closer fight. But in this one, this is not going to be close. Hichi is well rounded from what I've seen, but when you're fighting somebody who's that much of a bully, it's not going to be a fun fight, and she's going to want out as soon as she gets hit with a couple good ones.
Well, let's talk about a fight. I 100% agree with you before we move on. I think Floyd, who gets this one done, and it's going to be a stoppage, potentially in the second round. She's an amazing. She's a savage. She kicks very hard. She punches very hard, and she does have that power in the women's divisions, women's fights that can stop the fight. She has that that power in her hands. Them kicks. Are lethal. We've seen that in the last fight, and I think she gets this one done by body kick in the second round.
Yeah, that she can really get it done with any strike. To be honest, here she'll completely be outmatched, and her opponent Hichi is moving up weight class, so she's also going to be undersized. To name a bunch of other things.
Well, let's talk about a fight that potentially has all the makings of being the best fight on the card against two prospects, Youssef Delau versus Sean Woodson. This is a great fight, but who do you have it going to?
This is a very underrated fight. Sean Woodson was looking like a world beater before he lost Juliana Rosa. Even in that fight, he was completely piecing up Juliana Rosa. He was really on the path to getting a dominant unanimous decision, but his cardio let him down, and he's really not the best grappler. He had a long part of his combat sports career was as an amateur boxer. I believe he had 40 plus wins as an amateur boxer. So that's his background here, and he's fighting a guy Youssef Delau, who was looking really good early in 2020. He was on a 3-fight win streak, but eventually his hype was completely shut down by Ilia Topuria, and we know that Ilia Topuria is the cream of the crop when it comes to prospects. And then he fights Sung Wing Chu. I thought he was going to get that fight done, but Choi was the better striker in that one. So unless Zalal gets this to the ground and finds a submission, I just don't think it's going to be his night. We know Woodson has one of the strangest physiques in all of the UFC. He's got a crazy reach and height advantage against anybody in this division. So I think Woodson will present issues to anybody as long as he can keep this fight upright, and he'll pick him up and just do it from distance. Yeah, this is going to be a good showcase for Woodson here. It's really tough to see a guy Zalal who's doing so well last year. Now he's looking like he's going to go on a skid here.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Zalal, he looked phenomenal inside the UFC. But he came in at UFC 3-0, and then fell back-to-back losses against, as you mentioned, Latupia and Song Woo-Chu, yeah. But Elia Latup, he's a great fighter. He's got a great fight coming up too. I can't remember, but it's an absolute banger. I forgot. Ryan Hall, that's it, versus Elia Latupia. It's going to be an absolute showstopper, that one. Definitely a finish in that one, 100% a finish in that one. It's going to either be a KO for Ilya or it's going to be a submission win for Ryan Hall. That's the only way I see it happening. Yeah,
that fight 100% deserves a slot on that main card, on the Conor card. So, yeah, tune into that one, guys. That's going to be a cracker.
100%. Anyway, we're here to talk about Zalal versus Woodson, and you put literally the nail on the head. Really, Woodson, long, rangy. There possibly isn't anyone who's long and as big as him in division. You got the shouts on Max Holloway versus Zabit, Zab and Zabit. Them two guys are massive, but he's also very big for the division, and he's going to cause anyone problems on the striking realm. And this is the way I see it going. I think, as you mentioned, Zalal was too short for him. The reach, the size will play a massive factor. He's going to keep Zalal at his range. Not allowed to takedowns, because that's the only way Zalal gets this done, if he gets the takedown. But I think Woodson utilizes his kicks effectively, especially that push kick. I think he's going to use it, and them calf kicks are going to be coming handy too. This one, I don't think we will see a knockout. I think this one will go to the judges' scorecards, and I'm going to favor Sean Woodson.
Yeah, I agree. We've seen Zalal be very tough and durable. He escaped a ton of submissions attempts against Ilia Topuria. And let's move on here. We got the first fight of the night between Claudio Poulos and Jordan Levitt. This is a very intriguing fight, because if you've seen Jordan Levitt's career, he doesn't stay in there very long. He usually finishes his opponents very early. He completely overwhelms them on the ground and finishes them. And he got his first knockout victory in his last fight, and he did not get it done by strikes. He got it done by one of the most vicious slams I've ever seen. That was absolutely brutal, and he actually trained that. He prepared for it, and it was tough to see a vet like Matt Wyman just get a bullet like that. That was about 22 seconds. So this is kind of like his UFC debut again, because his debut was so short. He almost admitted to having ring rust from having such short fights. Claudio Poulos, on the other hand, he's been fairly inactive in the past couple of years. He had some injuries, COVID stopped him from getting into the country, but now he's back, and he's a really good grappler in his own right. But at the end of the day, I think he's going to be the better striker. He actually started from a striking background, and Jordan Levitt, on the other hand, he only likes to wrestle. But Levitt actually says he wants to make this fight a little longer, and he wants to show that he has better striking. And he even admitted that he has no evidence to say that. It's all self-belief. Self-belief can only get you so far, and Claudio Poulos should have the better striking skills. And I think he's going to expose Levitt, who's undefeated, but has he ever been tested by some good striker? No, he's never really even been pressured like that. So I think Poulos will give Levitt the adversity he needs, and this will be a good lesson for Jordan Levitt.
Wow, you might have actually turned my head here, because I was going for the Monkey King, Jordan Levitt, because he looked, as in his last fight, absolutely slammed Matt Wyman, and it was just vicious. That was one of the most vicious knockouts, one of the most vicious slams I've seen in UFC history, and that was just incredible. It was one of the lifetime opportunity that we'll probably ever see. But as you were talking about Claudio Poulos, he's got the better striking. Has Jordan Levitt ever been tested in the striking realm? Possibly not, and he's going to be tested against Claudio. So I don't know which way to go on here. What would be your best bet?
I would say I would just pick Claudio Poulos outright here. We know Jordan Levitt is a 2-1 favorite here, and I think that's a little crazy, especially being a guy who we've never tested in the striking realm. He just completely overwhelms his opponents on the ground. And a guy in Claudio Poulos, he's got knee bar wins in UFC. He's very crafty with his submissions, so I don't think Levitt can submit him here, and we don't know if Levitt can even take a punch, really. So, yeah, on the feet, he's very sloppy, and Poulos, I think Poulos can have to expose him, and yeah, Poulos by a decision is going to be my pick, just because Levitt is so unproven on the feet.
Wow. There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Oscar going into deep analysis on that one. He's telling you the insides and outs. So listen to him, because, he's got a great record when it comes to predicting fights.
Yeah, it's for 2021, it's about 63%. Before it was a little better, but I did predict the biggest underdog on that Chandler Oliveira card. So, I won't mind going against the public here. So I'm picking two fairly big underdogs, Kamala Kirk, and as I just said, Poulos. So watch out for that. And I will also be picking an underdog in boxing on August 28th against Jake Paul. I'm picking Tyron Woodley to knock out Jake Paul. Just so you know, guys, let's just give our quick thoughts on it, because on Fight Week we'll definitely go deep. But what are your first impressions of this?
This is a good fight, and it shows how scary this fight is for Jake Paul, because he requested a rematch clause on the contract. So this is, in Jake Paul's mind, if you're requesting a rematch clause, is there a little bit of doubt in his mind that maybe this is too quick of I don't want to say too quick of a step up, because Tyron Woodley has never boxed. He's 0-0 as a boxer, but he's primarily, probably me right to say, he primarily was a wrestler when he came inside the UFC. That was his bread and butter. But then he worked and worked, and then we saw that he had these KO power inside his hands. He has dynamite. Just look at that short Josh Koscheck KO is absolutely ruthless. Talking about ruthless, look at the Robbie Lawler knockout. He's knocked out of a lot of good guys. He's got power in them hands. All it takes is one shot to land, and it could be lights out for Jake. And I think that rematch clause in the contract shows how dangerous of a fight this is for Jake.
Yeah, first and foremost, I just got to say, ups to Jake Paul. I got all the respect in the world for him. I thought he wouldn't take this fight in the next couple of years. I was thinking maybe he pieces up Dylan Dennis. Maybe he beats Mike Perry. Maybe he beats these lower level guys. But a guy like Tyron Woodley, who always has the nuclear option, and he actually trained at the Wild Card Boxing Gym, which is a very respectable gym. This is not Askren against Jake Paul in any way, shape, or form. This is the guy in Tyron Woodley who just fought a couple months ago. He's in the best shape of his life, and this guy was able to rock his last opponent. And in his last couple of fights, what he's done best with is his striking. It's all a matter of him pulling the trigger. And in his last fight, he did pull the trigger against Vicente Luque, and he was able to have Luque on wobbly legs for a bit there. But a lot of people are just talking about Jake Paul. Of course, Jake Paul can box. I'll say he can box. I said it in the Ben Askren preview, but this is not Jake Paul and Ben Askren. This is not a guy in Ben Askren who barely knew how to throw a punch. This is Tyron Woodley who got a ton of knockouts in the UFC on the feet. And this is not a fight. Tyron Woodley has never gotten rocked and just looked for a takedown like Ben Askren. He stayed on the feet. He's comfortable on the feet. This is a pretty insane matchup. But does Jake Paul knock him out in some bizarre world? Yes, it's. I would say 1 out of 10 times it happened. And could it be this time? Yes, it could. If Tyron Woodley is only there for the money, if he completely overlooked them and just swings for the fences like Nate Robinson did, maybe it happens. But right now, I don't even know if Jake Paul has been proven to have a good chin at all. So Tyron always has a nuclear option, and I think he'll just inflict a beating on Jake Paul and teach him a lesson about all the disrespect he shelled out against the MMA community. And if Jake Paul wins this fight, it's going to be a very, very rough day, because we had the wrestler excuse with Ben Askren, but this time around it's going to be a very bad look if he wins. But Tyron for the win all the way, and I'm rooting very hard for him, and I'll be betting him as well as an underdog.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. It's ridiculous how he's an underdog in this fight. But, Jake Paul has had that experience inside the boxing ring, and Tyron Woodley hasn't. So that's where they probably got the odds from. But, Tyron Woodley, a 5-time world champion inside the UFC, knocked out some of the greatest welterweights in the world. Robbie Lawler knocked him out clean, knocked out Josh Koscheck brutally. This guy's got dynamite in his hands, and if he lands clean on Jake's chin, it could be a short night. But we've seen his last fight, he let his hands go, which was one of the best feelings in the world. How Tyron Woodley looked in his past 4 fights, especially in 3 of them where he just didn't throw, didn't strike, he was accepting positions. But in his last fight, he went out there, he gave it his best, and he threw until someone get knocked out. And that's what I wanted to see from Woodley. Is the heart still there? Yes. The heart is definitely still there. And I think Tyron Woodley's going to go out there, and I think he's going to get the job done.
Yeah, a lot of people are thinking Jake Paul is high level enough of a boxer to make Tyron Woodley pay for his wild swings, but I don't think that's the case. And let's get off this topic. We're over an hour in. We got some good fights this weekend. Make sure to tune in, and that'll be all from us.
Yeah, 100%. A great way to end it. Make sure you tune into the fights this week. Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul, and UFC returns this weekend. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I hope you enjoyed the Ultimate Fire. From me and Oscar, a very good bye, and we'll catch you next week. Thank you.